What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Lions' new quarterback, Jared Goff, and how the Lions could potentially bring the best out of Jared Goff once again. So let's get it started.
You know, I got to shout out DoseOfDion, man, because it was actually the first time I went live on YouTube. And, you know, guys don't know DoseOfDion. He put out a lot of good content for the Detroit Lions.
Welcome, everybody, to another video. Glad you guys are here. Now, before we get this thing started, I don't know if this is completely true or not, but I have seen that college football, the video game, is making a return. Is that legit? Like, I know this has nothing to do with the video, but I'm super excited. I'm kind of on a high right now just hearing this news, so I thought I would share it with you guys. If that's the case, like, woo! Like, I don't know what else to do. I'm just super pumped. Okay, that is awesome, right? College football's coming back. I love that video game. Man, that would be great. Hopefully they don't take away like a whole bunch of features, but even if it just stayed the exact same with like graphic improvements, I'm good. I'm good with it, man. I don't know what's happening with that, but either way, I'm just super excited for that. So I thought I would share that. It had nothing to do with the video, but I thought I would share it. All right, so let's talk about Jared Goff a little bit today. And really the last couple of days, man, it's all I could do is just watch Jared Goff film. I mean, look, I have NFL Game Pass, right? I bought that. I don't know when I bought this thing, but I bought it, so I might as well use it. And I didn't follow the Rams or Jared Goff, you know, in the past, so I didn't really know anything about this guy. But then we make this trade that I didn't think would happen. But now that Jared Goff is here, I'm just so intrigued, and I just want to learn as much as I possibly can about this guy, and I'm super excited. Actually, I'm very excited to see what he does with the Detroit Lions, and, you know, hopefully he gets an opportunity. But I can't help but watch so much Jared Goff clips. I mean, that's all I've been doing is watching past games. Not even just this past year, like also 2018, 2017, like that kind of thing. I just can't help it. 2019. I've been watching a lot of Jared Goff games. I've taken a couple notes as I've watched, and there's just... What I wanted to talk about today's video is certain things that I think you can do to bring the best out of Jared Goff once again, because Goff's path to where he is right now with the Lions has been very, very strange. You're talking about a first-round pick in the draft, just clicking with Sean McVay. It just absolutely clicks. And then 2018, you know, they're a Super Bowl team. 2018, he puts up these monster numbers, and it seems like everything's great. Oh, they're on the upswing, you know, Jared Goff, Sean McVay, this is great. And then the last two seasons, it's like the exact opposite. Things start to go downhill. 2020 becomes a mess. All of a sudden, they're not sure on Goff's future. They're like, okay, well, we got to find a way to trade him, even though we just gave him this big extension. And then that relationship breaks apart. Very awkward. Jared Goff's like, I'm just happy to be somewhere where they appreciate me. It's like, what in the world just happened? How in 2 years did that happen? You know, how did he go from putting up these great numbers, Super Bowl, to they don't even want to start me anymore? That's what's crazy about Jared Goff's career. And I think, you know, with the Rams making this trade, to me, the Rams brought in a more polished player, of course, than Matthew Stafford. That's way better for winning right now. That gives you some things that Goff, you know, didn't recently. So I understand that move. I completely respect it. And I think it's a good move for the LA Rams. But for the Lions getting Jared Goff in return, I saw this interesting take on Jared Goff, and I wanted to share it with you guys. They said, look at Jared Goff, 26, where he is right now, and compare that to where Matthew Stafford was when he was 26 years old, okay? You're talking about a guy in Matthew Stafford at 26 that was making these big plays, exciting things like that. But his biggest issue at the time was turning the ball over. He had seasons of 16, 17, and 19 picks in the years before. That was his biggest issue. But he was making these big plays. He was exciting, but he had to clean some things up. He had to polish some things up. And recently we've seen him do that, so you kind of forget. But that's where he was at 19, right? Stafford was there at 19. Then the Caldwell era comes in. They help him out. They try to limit his turnovers. And really since then, he's been more polished with his game, and he's kind of refined it. And that's why the Rams made this huge push to go get him. But then you look at Goff, and you're saying, okay, yeah, he's had some turnover issues. Some of it has to do more with fumbles than even interceptions. But he's had some issues. However, he still shows you flashes of reason that he was a first overall pick. Well, he gets a fresh start. And you're kind of like, okay, well, how can the Lions get Jared Goff back to what we saw before? Now, of course, he signed that big contract. So you don't have as much money to play around with as you do with a rookie quarterback. But that doesn't mean you can't. I mean, teams do it. A lot of teams do it. Most teams do it. You know, you pay your guys, and you got to find a way to prioritize certain needs. You can't have everything. You got to prioritize certain things, and you got to make sure you build the right team. And I think Goff will get a chance. I hope he does. I'm not saying he's going to be the future, but if you want to get the best out of Jared Goff, there's a couple of notes that I've taken away of what's kind of went wrong. See, last season, it was like Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff are like polar opposites. I mean, they just don't look the same at all. The biggest difference is just how they play. I mean, you have a guy in Matthew Stafford who's 6th in completed air yards, and you have Jared Goff who's 31st in that category, right? Jared Goff, 4.9 completed air yards per attempt. 4.9? Like, what? Like, that was the biggest difference. I mean, that stat tells you alone the big difference. You have Stafford taking shots, pushing the ball down the field, making big plays, and you have Goff who's basically there's just no deep shots at all in the Rams games anymore. But the thing is, that wasn't always the case. I mean, in 2018, that wasn't the case at all. There's no shots in this offense. I mean, it's 3rd and 10, they run a screen. There's no shots in this offense. So you're wondering what's going wrong. Well, taking a look at some of the numbers and watching some of the Jared Goff games, it's become clear to me the Lions need to make sure that they get one thing going. And it's something that for basically 12 years they haven't been able to do, so it can be very concerning. But they got to get that run game going, okay? It's just a must. Now, for any quarterback, you got to have a run game, right? You really have to have a run game. But for Jared Goff, if he has a run game, this dude can absolutely thrive. And that's what happened with the Rams. In 2018, when they had Todd Gurley back there doing Todd Gurley things, they were averaging 4.9 yards per carry as a team. And in 2018, this guy was a beast. I mean, he was putting up these great numbers. And I think that has a lot to do with the shot. So not only did they have Brandon Cooks, but also this play action rollout, you got things open deep. You know, you got guys stacking the box. You got passes open deep. And now what you're seeing in 2020, where you have a team that's rushing 4.3 yards per carry, the year before 3.7, what you see these last couple of years, you're seeing the play action be much less effective. And really what teams are doing is basically just forcing him to take the shots underneath. They're forcing him to settle underneath. And they don't have a really deep threat, a guy that can get a lot of separation deep. You don't see a lot of separation. So it's forcing a lot of passes underneath. Teams losing out on their deep threat in Brandon Cooks and also not having the same rushing attack that they've had, which is kind of like middle of the pack right now. And honestly, 4.3 yards per carry, I don't know if I think the Lions' best under Stafford was 4.3 yards per carry. So, yikes, man. And I think that was when we were a playoff team in 2011. I'm just saying. To me, that's why, Sean McVay made this trade and they wanted to go push after this because they see the skill gap there, right? You have a guy that doesn't have all this and he's still able to be more productive, push them on the field, make big plays. And you have a guy in Goff that doesn't have that, which, is still better what Stafford's had to deal with for most of his career in terms of like rushing the football. And it's just kind of a mess. It's just kind of a mess all around. So for them, they're just saying, okay, even with what we had last year, it would be an improvement from what Stafford had. I mean, he was dealing with garbage. I mean, just really bad everywhere across the board. And, then the only thing he had really going for him was weapons. But Kenny Golladay only plays in 7 games in the year. So that's the reason they made the trade. But for the Lions, we're looking at this as a future approach. We need to make sure that we get this thing going. I mean, look, that's why I keep saying Stafford was a extreme talent, and he started to kind of polish things up, just like Goff is 26. When he was 26, Stafford had to polish things up because he wasn't polished, just like Goff isn't right now. Maybe we're looking 6 years later and we're saying, okay, hey, Goff has, really picked it up and he's really good now. He's a way better quarterback than when he was then. He's not turning the ball over. He's taking more deep shots. He's hitting on more deep shots. He's making more plays. Maybe that's the case, but being 26, he's still a young guy, right? He's still a very young guy that's still learning and still improving and he's still adapting to the NFL, which was different from what he did at Cal. It's kind of what Stafford had to go through as well. I mean, that's why I brought that up, that when they're both 26, they both had these issues that had to be fixed. And they figured it out. Stafford got a fresh start with the Caldwell era. Goff gets a fresh start with the Lions. And he's still got room to improve and get better. This is who he is and this is what he's going to be. But at this point, in this stage of his career, there's things that he needs to be a successful quarterback in the NFL. And he needs them to a higher level than other elite quarterbacks do, like your Mahomes, like other elite quarterbacks in the NFL, like your Rodgers, like your Staffords, like your Brees, like whatever it may be. With Jared Goff, it's even more of a must. And for most quarterbacks, it's going to be the case. Whether you're drafting or not, you're going to have a running game. But for Goff, when he's had a running game, he's been very effective because he's been able to use the play action rollout. He's been able to hit passes downfield, and you have guys that get separation deep. But now, without that, teams aren't having to stack the box. You have teams that are forcing passes underneath. They're kind of just letting everything sit in front of them. And you can see, he's completing a lot of his passes, 67%. When not pressured, he's completing like 81% of his passes. That's great, but he's not taking any shots down the field. I mean, the offense has lost that dynamic completely because he hasn't been able to be a game changer in the Rams offense because of that fact. I mean, you look at a guy like Stafford. Now, look, if they're averaging 4.0 yards per carry and 4.3 yards per carry in the Rams with Matthew Stafford, for him, he'd be like, wow, this is great. I've never had this before because honestly, that's how bad we've been rushing the ball. Now, if they can get back, if they were at the 2018 level, Matthew Stafford probably would put up an MVP season. If they're averaging 4.9 yards per carry, I'm just saying. So I think McVay wanted a guy that can make those more tight window, deep passes, that's not afraid to take the shots down the field. But Goff isn't forcing the shots down the field recently. He wasn't forcing them with the Rams because they weren't there and the play action wasn't opening it up. So it was kind of just, okay, make sure everything sits underneath. And that's what their offense was, and that's what it's became. And I think that's really hurt a lot of their offense, and that's why it's less explosive. They just didn't have the same year. And that's why the Rams wanted a guy that could go make plays, because I don't think Jared Goff was ever looked at as a game changer. He was looked at as a really good game manager. But when he took away what he needed to thrive and play at a super high level, it wasn't like that. The offensive line took a step back. They weren't running the ball the same way, and he didn't have a deep threat to open things up. But what's great about this is with Jared Goff is you have an opportunity to get that going. I mean, look, if you have Goff, you have the 7th pick in the draft. You have 6 picks this year. You have a set 2 first-round picks year after that and 2 first-round picks year after that. You better be able to get this run game going. And the great thing is like, okay, the Rams, they had some questions with their offensive line recently. And Guess what? 2018, you would have never guessed it won Offensive Line of the Year. Kind of crazy, right? That he puts up those big numbers. But you're looking at a Lions group that's kind of got that. I mean, at one point, this was the best rushing offensive line in the league. At one point this year, they graded out, but they didn't have the running backs. I mean, at that point, when the offensive line was graded out so high, the Lions running backs were graded as the worst in the league. No one could do anything with the football. Adrian Peterson, Carrion, they struggled. And Swift started to take over, and Swift was doing really well behind this offensive line. That's why I've been pushing for another really good running back, because they're that important, and the Lions need to find a way to get this thing going. I believe if you can get a run game going, and honestly, I don't care if people call it a reach or whatnot, you got to find a way to get this run game going. That means grabbing a really good running back to put with Swift. And that can mean going offensive line, but I'm telling you, Swift can run behind this offensive line at a very high level, 4.6 yards per carry. No one else in our backfield could. That tells me it's a running back issue, but also you could add offensive line, no question, because the guard spot's kind of up for grabs right now. That being with Logan Stenberg takes over now, which he's supposed to be a really good run blocker. I mean, that must be the focus, and it should have been the focus heading into this offseason no matter what. But now with Goff, if your focus is we got to get this run game going, because if you can do that, Goff can play at a high level, because Goff is a pretty darn accurate quarterback that's look, he's kind of learned to play under center and take a lot of rollout passes, but they've kind of taken that away. They've taken all the deep shots away. They forced him to just be underneath, dink and dunk. I think that gets Goff back to, what he was. First off, great, have a deep threat, right? But also, you got to find a way to get this run game going. And unfortunately, the issue is we haven't been able to do that for a long time. I'm hoping with Dan Campbell, Anthony Lynn, who's got the run game background, I think the Lions realize that issue. Like, these guys aren't dumb. Brad Holmes knows Jared Goff firsthand. They know what Anthony Lynn has done everywhere being a former running back coach and how well he can coach rushing the football. If they can get it going with Anthony Lynn, Jared Goff is not a game changer. He's not this elite talent right now. But if you can get him some help, which is the case with a lot of quarterbacks, he can kind of start to get back to that level, because Goff can be a really good quarterback and he can show up in big games. He's very accurate when he's comfortable, but he wasn't comfortable last year. I mean, he's getting the ball out of his hands quickly. He's not taking any shots whatsoever. It was just an ugly offense. You go back a couple years, everything looks different. To me, the biggest difference there is simply the run game. It just was gone. And obviously, you lost their deep threat in Cooks, and you can always add one of those lines. I think they definitely need to. For the most part, the stats correlate between Cam Akers running the ball really well, being effective, or the run game just being effective in a game, to Jared Goff playing well in that game, putting up a very high pass rate, being very efficient. And sometimes, like I said, he makes mistakes, things like that, like he can't make, and that's not on the running game. But the thing is, Jared Goff, to me right now, isn't a top-tier quarterback. He's not that. He could get to that, but he still has to develop. He has to get better. Sometimes you need that, right? Some players don't come in and they just kick off right away. Goff had it going early. He came in, McVay got this thing rolling. They were doing things well, and he looked really good. But when things started to go downhill, he kind of went downhill with it. And they're like, you know what? We got to go win a Super Bowl. This is our window. We got to go get an absolute playmaker right now. A guy that last season put up MVP numbers for half the year that only had 3.3 yards per carry with his run game. When Goff doesn't have a great run game, things look bad. He could get to a higher level. He just still needs work. He's still got to develop. He needs help. He's working with Anthony Lynn. He's got a quarterback coach that was a former quarterback. He's got these guys to help him out. He still needs time. But in the meantime, the Lions need to focus on fixing something they never fixed, and that's being able to run the football. And we bring it up all the time. Again, all these quarterbacks that look successful when you can run the ball. How much it's helped Tannehill? How much it's helped Baker Mayfield, right? It'll help guys. It's helped Jared Goff. I mean, that is the difference. Rams, you can even take a look back at 2019 Super Bowl when they lost the Patriots 13-3. You look at that game, right? Patriots, they didn't allow them to run the ball. Their leading rusher at 3.5 yards per carry. He had 35 rushing yards. Jared Goff needed to be the guy to take that game home, to send them home, right? I think the Patriots just controlled time possession, but he needed to be the guy to be like, okay, take us to the promised land, right? We need you one game. We need you to be a playmaker. He wasn't that playmaker for them, and they didn't have the running game for him to kind of play off of. Things go down. We know that this guy has the skill to kind of take us home, like we've seen before, what he's been able to do. Goff doesn't have that ability right now to just say, okay, you know what, scratch the things aren't working, you got to take us to where we need to be. He wasn't able to do that. Now, Stafford doesn't do it every time, but he gives you a better shot of having that than what Goff did. He could be a big, really good quarterback in the future. But for right now, that's where he's at as a player. He's not going to completely game change your offense. He may never do that. For the Lions, they have an opportunity to say, let's get this run game going. We have a foundation that's pretty much built here with the offensive line. We have blocking tight ends. We have some receivers that can block. Let's get this thing rolling. We got to get this run game clicking. And now is the opportunity with a quarterback with Goff that's young, that still has potential, that's only 26 years old, that's still working on fixing things. If you can get this run game going, I think he's going to be solid. I don't think you need the best receivers for Jared Goff to be successful. I don't, because I think his ball placement is good enough. The issue is you just have to be able to take some pressure off and allow to push the ball down the field. Now with the Rams, they really didn't give him any options deep, and they tried to, basically just go to get the ball off quick, go ball quick, and every pass was just underneath. There was no separation deep, and there was no run game, and the run game was not at the same level. It wasn't terrible, just wasn't at the same level. So to me, the Lions, if they're going to get Goff going again, you got to fix that run game. That's got to be a priority, and I'm glad they got the coaches that I think can do it. Cam wants to run. Anthony Lynn knows how to run the ball. Now you just got to get the personnel. That's got to be the Lions' focus this offseason.